Hey there, my name is Catherine Storing, and I am the host of the REI Friends podcast. And I just finished having the most amazing, powerful conversation with Jenn and Joe DellaFave. They don't know this, but I call them the king and queen of creative financing. And they just broke it down in very simple terms that anyone, even me, can understand when it comes to selling your home in a way that is simple and quickly for you, that it works for you and it works for them as well. So if you're interested and the market is what it is right now and you're having some issues, if you are in the Massachusetts states, I can help you. If you are in Florida or any other states, I know Jenn and Joe can help you as well. But if you're looking to learn, if you're a realtor and you're not really familiar with creative financing and you want to learn how to do it and you want to help your sellers, this is going to be a great episode for you. At the end, we're going to give you some information how to connect with them, with Joe and with Jenn, and also in the description of the show, you'll be able to connect with them as well. So without further ado, let's get right into today's episode. Hi guys, welcome to the REI Friends podcast. How are you?
Hello, we're awesome. How are you?
Awesome.
I'm doing great. It feels like we were just here. This is like deja vu.
Well, we are so happy to be back. Round two. Here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those people that for some reason don't know who you guys are, can you tell us who you are?
Yeah, I'm Jenn. Wow. This is my wife, Jenn, and I'm Joe. There we go. We're going to get this right.
I'm Jenn. This is Joe.
And we are full-time real estate investors from upstate New York, now in Florida.
Yep. So the long and short of it is we help people sell their homes, and we also can help people buy houses. And we do it really as pain-free, stress-free as possible.
I love that. And the reason why we're talking today is because Jenn and I were together last weekend, and for some reason, I haven't thought about this story forever because it's been years and years ago. And for some reason, it popped up, and I mentioned to her how I bought this crazy expensive house right when the market was crashing the last time, not this time, the last time. And we just have put all this money from this other sale, and we had the down payment, and then the market crashed, and then I was getting divorced at the same time. Not a good combo. And we lost all the equity, all the money that we put from the other sale. And I said, had I known about creative financing, I would have been able to not lose all that money and then have to come to the closing table with money. And
Right.
Jenn was saying, oh my God, so many people are on the same boat. And I thought that you guys would be a great resource to explain to people what creative financing is and how, because of different circumstances, they might find themselves for different reasons and they might not know that they are options. So I thought you guys would be a great resource for people out there.
Yeah, well, it's a great resource for obviously us for buyers, but it's a better resource for the sellers. They just a lot of times don't know about it, and even more too, the realtors, because there's a lot of realtors right now with the market changing who, those listings are sitting on the market a lot longer than typical. Prices are pulling back. Interest rates are going much higher than they were in the last year to two. So with the change in the landscape of that being said, this is a great strategy for a lot of different folks. You just have to know how it works and what to look for and how we can make this work for a seller, a realtor, or us as a buyer, or somebody else buying it too.
Mm-hmm.
That is so good. So for someone that has never heard of the term creative financing, and I know that there are different strategies that fall under that category, but if you were to give like an overall overview of what it is, how would you describe it?
So creative financing it's a very large umbrella. There's a lot of different strategies inside that you can use depending on the situation and what best fits that scenario. But really what this is, it's the art of buying real estate where you're not using a bank, going traditional, putting 20% down and things like that. And you're not trying to use your own credit. And a lot of times you can do this where you're buying a property and you're buying it from a seller, where traditionally you'd walk into Wells Fargo and say, pull my credit. Do I qualify for a mortgage? Go through all of that. Where with this, the seller's the bank now. So that's part of creative finances with the seller being the bank, and you're able to work terms directly with the seller you're able to therefore forego that process, and with some intricacies, pay sometimes even a little bit more for the property if the deal makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is so good. So that brings to mind thinking about the people that have to sell quick for whatever reason. They got a new job, they have a sick relative and they have to go take care of, and they don't have the time to wait for the bank to do it the traditional way. So they could come to someone, so people like you guys, and say, I need to sell this property. Can you help me? So let's say, for example, in my case, where I had just bought the property under a year, I was immediately upside down because the market crashed and I had a mortgage. So I was not paid off. I had a mortgage. How would you have guys approach that scenario?
So we have a lot of that happening actually right now. And I was just talking with somebody today stating the fact is you'd be surprised how many folks who've just bought a house just this year.
Right.
This is November right now. So if you're watching this later on, it's November 10th, 2022. And folks who have bought a house in the last 10, 11 months or less, who bought it and now need to sell it, you would be surprised how many there are. And with that situation happening, if you were lucky to buy a house in the spring of this year, if you're lucky enough, you usually had to pay over asking, right? So somebody who maybe just took out a VA loan, and with the benefit of a VA loan is you could finance 100% of the purchase price, and you could even roll in closing costs. So if somebody found a $450,000 home and they went $50,000 over asking, and they bought it for $500,000, the house appraised, and they financed $500,000 plus rolled in $5,000-6,000 in closing costs, they owe $506 on that house. Now, if they bought that house in, I don't know, let's just say April this year, first payment usually won't come in for a few months. Then they start making that first payment around June, July, August. Now something happened, job transfer, a divorce. You'd be surprised. You'd be shocked. New builds. I have even a new build. All different situations, but now it's time they need to sell. Now the market, when they bought the house, was at 3.5%, 4%. Now the market's in the 7s, right? So that house isn't worth the same amount at 7 or 8% than it is at 3%. The payment's much higher. Folks are interested in payments. It's not always just the price of the house, right? I could sell you a $5 million house if it was $500 a month, right? And you'd be able to afford that, no problem. It's not the price, it's the payment. So the payment gets to be too expensive. So what happens? The prices come down. So you list the house hopefully for $550, thinking it's going to sell. It doesn't. That price goes to $525. That house goes to $499. At $499, you still have to pay a commission to a realtor, closing costs, and that's say a 6%, even a 5% commission. That's a considerable amount of money at that range, right? So in that scenario I just listed, if you sold it at $500,000, you'd probably have to write a check at closing for $35,000 plus to say goodbye to your home. Now, a lot of folks don't have that much money. So what happens in that scenario where a cash buyer can't buy that home? They owe too much on it, right? A realtor, maybe just it's sitting on the market now 115, 130 days and it's not selling, and these folks have already moved. What happens now? They can't afford 2 payments. The folks are in a really bad spot. Do you keep lowering the price? Does it not sell at $499? Because that's what they bought it for, right? Does it sell for $450, $475? And then they're in a real bad hole of having to write a check because they still owe $506.
Might be making 2 mortgage payments at that rate too.
Yeah.
So these are the scenarios that sometimes that we come across. And so instead of being a typical investor who just only way they buy is with a lowball cash offer, does not work in that scenario. It's a beautiful house. It's a turnkey, beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood. Some of these houses are $1 million homes. Some are $500,000 homes. Some's that $80,000 home down the street, right? There's all different scenarios this is happening in right now, but it's happening. So in that situation with creative finance, there's ways that we can buy that property. And it's been a great learning example right now for a lot of sellers, because what I explained to them is that if I'm going to buy your house for the top of the range, which is the 506, I can, but the way I would make that work for me to pay that much for it is with seller financing, which means I'll buy it for the 506. Well, I'll get into a few other things, but the long story short is I'm going to take over making your mortgage payments on your behalf. I'm going to make those payments on your behalf. The mortgage loan is going to stay in your name, but I'm going to buy the house, deeds into my name, and I'm going to take over making your mortgage payments so you're free to go. And the reason why it's beneficial for me is because your interest rate was 4% or 3%, where if I walk in a Bank of America or Chase Bank right now, chances are I'm going to pay 7 or 8%. And at 7 or 8%, the payment doesn't work well for a rental or anything like that. At 3% where you're at right now, this builds in enough room for me. And that's why I get stretch and pay way more than anybody else can. So you got to know the intricacies. There's some, things around it to make sure you're doing the right way, but this is the way to do that. So what are we doing? I'm helping out a seller in a situation where they don't really have a whole lot of other choices. And unless they understand how this works, they might not even know this is an option.
And I love too how when you talk to folks in this situation, you explain that it's just a delayed cash sale.
So really that's what, and they love the fact of it too. Sometimes they have equity, right? Some folks who maybe just bought a house 3 or 4 years ago, maybe they put a lot of money down, right? I've got some situations right now where a gentleman has a beautiful 2-year-old turnkey house listed on the market and didn't sell because the market isn't what it was. So he says, I'm moving to California. I was just going to pack up and leave the house because I know the area is just blowing up. He's like, I was going to close it all up and come back in 5 years and then sell it because I know I'll sell it for more than 100 grand more. He's like, my payment's really, really low and I have solar panels there. So my utility bills are like $4 a month, right? He has no other choice right now because he's like, the house didn't sell in the market. He has equity, but now he tells me if you could give me $20,000 down, I'll let you take over my payments and you guys could have the house. So $20,000 down to a seller. We cover some closing costs. So, probably about $25,000 down. We have a beautiful turnkey house and a super low payment with a super low interest rate in a beautiful area that just is, blowing up. It's 2 blocks from like the $1 million lake houses.
Right.
That's so good. So one thing that you mentioned, so many great things, but one thing that I love is that you guys are so closing. I know a lot of people feel that would feel pretty kind of iffy about, hey, I'm going to give you my house. I'm going to put you on the deed. And is this legal? Like, I know a lot of people feel that way. So how do you guys cover yourself and the seller, give them some peace of mind so they know that this is on the up and up?
So it's really, maybe a lot of folks haven't heard of it, but if you go to the HUD statement, it's on every transaction, and you go to line 203, they actually walk you right through the process of how to do that. So what happens is when I'm talking to a realtor and I'm walking them through this process, because we have a conversation, they do ask that question, are you assuming the mortgage? I say, no, I'm not assuming the mortgage. It's very similar to that, but I'm not going through the assumption process. Line 203 of the HUD statement talks about how to buy properties, what's called subject to the underlying debt. And that's what it's called. And it explains that clearly right there. And that's exactly what I explained to them the situation. So, and when you're explaining to a seller or I'm explaining to a realtor, especially right now, they understand the benefit to me as a buyer that if I could buy their house and pay more than basically almost anybody else's, because, if you listed at $550 and it didn't sell and they drop it to $499 and it still isn't selling and it's just sitting there, there's nobody even walking through the door. And I'm going to buy it for $506 because that's what they owe. And I'm going to cover closing costs and things like that. And they ask me, why would I do that? Well, because I'm going to turn into a rental, right? Or an Airbnb or a midterm rental. There's a lot of different strategies I could do with that property. But the benefit to me of buying the property, even at that price, I'm really not as concerned. Like I said earlier, it's the payment. And if I have a low interest rate at 3.5%, I talked to one today, he's at 2.25.
Oof.
Wow.
So when I have a low payment at a really low interest rate, that's the benefit to me. That's why I get stretch and pay more than anybody else is willing to. And even better yet, instead of you having to write a check for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, and some folks, that's not even an option. I have one lady, she said, I'm just going to give the house back to the bank. I didn't know what else I could do.
Wow.
If you have a foreclosure on your credit, that's going to really hurt your credit for a really long time, right? So the benefit to this too is you have to, we give the folks obviously a good track record, but also too, we have an idea of what we're going to plan on doing with the property. It's not like we're just going to shoot from the hip and say, hey, I don't even know. I might just turn this into a, tents in the backyard. Like you want to have maybe Airbnb's your thing. And this is a kind of property that fits your criteria. Maybe rentals are your thing. And this fits your criteria, right? So we have strategies that we love. So we make sure it fits what we're looking for. So we do come across a lot of deals where it's a great deal and it's a seller finance deal, but maybe it doesn't fit the criteria for what we are looking for, but maybe we know there are folks who are looking for that. So we could kind of connect them too.
That is so good. So I love that you explain and how you guys are doing it. It's not just win for you, it's win-win for you and also the seller. And that way everybody leaves with a good feeling in their tummy, right? But I also love the fact that because you are taking over their mortgage, doing subject to, like you're gonna give them a good payment record, which is in turn is also gonna fix or help fix their credit. So it's really a no-brainer once you understand it. But I know people can have different hesitations. How long have you guys been doing this?
Yeah, so we started doing this really in 2016 was when I started really diving into it. Now, the one thing is if their payments are behind, their credit is probably already dinged up. It's got to be, right? So if that's the case and we got them current or they got current before closing, right? And then we continue to make those payments on time, this increases their credit. Now, I know a lot of folks are going to think, well, Joe, Jen, hey guys, what happens, Kat, if that mortgage is still in their name and they want to buy a house later on? Doesn't that mess up their DTI, their debt to income, right? So there's certain precautions that we take that when we buy the house, that we make sure that it's well known with a closing statement, and we create a note between us and the seller showing that we're making that payment. So with the note and things like this, if they ever have to get in front of somebody else getting another mortgage or a car loan or whatever it is, they provide the documents and this will wash out their debt to income. So that won't affect them buying a property later on, because we have a lot of folks who are saying just that, it's a year later, 2 years later, and hey, I'm ready to buy my next house. And they say that this is on my credit and it's stopping me from getting my next house. Once we supply them the documents, if they don't already have it, which they do, but sometimes they lose them. So we give it back to them and get it again. But we give it to them, or the loan person they need us to send it to, and we explain what's happening, and it's never an issue.
That is so good, because I'm sure that's stopping a lot of people from saying, yeah, this sounds great, but eventually or within a year or two, I will want to buy a property and this is going to be in my way. And the way you explained it makes so much sense.
Really explain real quick, just so I explain it to the seller, so I don't overly complicate it, is I make sure I let them know that the attorneys will have the right proper documents drafted up. So when you are ready to buy another property or buy something else later on, that this won't interfere with that. So make sure you keep your copies, but make sure that you also keep my information. So if you lose your copies, we'll be able to get you those real quick.
Yeah, that is so good. And I think what you're saying with that is you're not going to disappear with their deed. You're not just going to vanish in the middle of the night. You want them to be able to contact you if they have any questions or need any copies.
And they do, and they will, and it happens. These are long-term relationships.
That's what I was going to say. It's a people business. So property is a byproduct, but you have to be great with people and really be able to explain so that they are comfortable. Like you said, it's really important.
Yeah, it's so good, because I think they kind of have to do the homework. And that's why I asked you how long you guys been doing this, and the fact that you are very comfortable and encourage them to keep your information, to reach out if they have any questions. Because especially when you're going through a traumatic experience, you get a divorce, somebody die, and you have to make arrangements, or you have to move very quickly. You can be a very smart person, but in the moment, it can be very overwhelming to take all those information. So to have someone that can be a resource and explain and be available when things come down later on and you have more time or more bandwidth to understand, that you have people that are experienced and can kind of walk you through the process.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to let them know that we have been doing this for a while. We also have a lot of, reviews from people that we've bought their houses and they've been happy with us and they love our process and how great and easy it was. I'm actually chatting with the seller right now and he's thanking me because he's getting to move out of state closer to his family. And he's like, this process is crazy, but I can't believe like you've been great through the whole thing and made it great, because he's been living in this house forever. And now he's uprooting, moving because his kids moved out of state. He's like, I can't believe I'm doing it, but I'm doing it. So, we run into a lot of these really situations, and it's the connections that you make with the people and all of their stories.
The stories, yeah.
It is a really cool part of the process for sure.
Yeah, I love that. And now let's talk a little bit about the part that people don't really like so much, is that not everybody is as open and well-intentioned as you guys are. So there are some people that are doing some shady stuff out there. So what would you recommend someone that is entertaining going the creative financing route? What should they be asking the people that they're going to be potentially selling their home to?
So there are, once you deal with as much folks that we have, you cannot believe the story. So you always want to make sure that you're working with somebody. If I'm a seller and I'm considering selling my house to somebody who does this, do they have a track record doing this? Who's their title company or attorney that they use? I would call that attorney or that title company and find out, do they do a lot of transactions? How have these transactions been? Have they shown up to closing and close on time and like it was supposed to, right? And I want to use the title company or lawyer as a reference, right? And I think that's important, because if we use always some of the best title company attorneys around who've got great reputations, who really understand the business. And if you are a fly-by-night, these folks won't work with you. So you want to make sure that you're using, as us being the investors, a reputable attorney and title companies who are well-known, who do really good business. And then obviously, two, if I'm a seller, I'm going to want to know who that is. Now, if you're a rookie investor, you've never made a deal before, hey, listen, I know everybody's got to make their first deal, but maybe that rookie investor puts a little bit of a down payment in on that deal, right? If you've have a investor who's really savvy, who's been doing this a while, great track record, and they're going to take good care of you and you're in good hands, they're able to handle the situation the way that's best suited for you and it works out well for them. That's the only way to truly do real estate. So it's got to be beneficial to your buyer and it's got to be beneficial to the seller. And it's the meeting of the minds that makes that deal work. And if it's a good fit for everybody and you feel like they're a good person as far as what you've discovered by getting some references, like through title companies and things like that, that's what makes the win. Also, too, having the proper legal documentation draft is important too. So what happens if the deal does go backwards? Like, let's plan for that. Let's hope it never happens, but let's plan if it does, what happens next, right? And we put the right documents in place that they're able to get the house back. It depends on the state. There's some states could drag on a little bit more. And then there's some states like Texas where, boy, they'll get they could the house back so quick. Mm-hmm. So it's just, you make sure you have the right attorney draft the documents to cross all the T's and dot all the I's, and that's important.
That is so good. So you mentioned something about like that feeling that you get. Did you ever have a deal where you probably went through, but at first you kind of had a feeling like, this person might not be good, or was your gut always right when you were about to do a deal with someone?
So, it's a people business. And I really, truly say with this business, the blessing about it is you only do business with the people that want to do business with you. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't ever want to force somebody into a deal, and I don't ever want to be forced into a deal myself. Right? So if it's a deal that I like and that it makes sense on our end and everybody's in a good fit, we make that deal happen. We really do. Now, sometimes have we worked with maybe like renters before in the past we didn't love and things like that? Yes, that happens with anybody, but we fix it and move on. But, when we're buying a property this way, and you listen to the story and you learn all the different ways to do this so we could offer the best solution as a buyer, for a seller, usually we try to find the best match and find a good fit for them and they're happy.
Mm-hmm. And we're never begging, like Joe said, we're never forcing. And so there are situations where people would rather, really forfeit their credit and foreclose just because they cannot grasp, like you said, maybe going through a really, really hard time. And no matter how many times, which way we explain it. And that's so heartbreaking for my team and I, because we're trying our very best. Like, we see the solution and how to keep money in her pocket, and yet there's just nothing we can say to make her feel better. And so that's frustrating, I will say. But when they do listen and you can help, that feeling is unbelievable.
Yeah, that is so good. I think that's a great tip for people that are listening and are entertaining the idea of doing creative financing. They really have to listen to their gut. And if they feel the person is driving the deal too more to forcing it, that might be a time to pull back and maybe interview other people, because this technique, it's well known. So they are options. So I think it will be a great idea to, if you feel like the person is just doesn't have your best interest at heart, that you probably talk to other people, or like you said, check on the references and see how other people have felt about their deals, and then make an informed decision.
Well, I will say too, if you think about it, like, I know we have a fancy term for it, creative finance. And I know it has all these, legal terms like subject to and wrap mortgages. But if you think about it, people have been buying and trading with goats and chickens and seashells. And a farmer is selling his land to another farmer, and what do? They probably write it some IOU, and he's making payments to that other farmer every month for that land, rather it be in cash or corn or some type of bartering system. So I don't want to overly complicate it when I say this, but if you really break it down to basics, it's a very common way of buying real estate. Once we take all the terms and all the fanciness out of it, it's just finding good, agreeable terms between a seller and a buyer, having an attorney write it up, those terms, everybody sign to it, and then everybody do what they're supposed to do. And if everybody just does that, you wouldn't need lawyers. Life would be great, but you have them do that just in case, right?
Yeah, that is so good. So it's simple, but it's done right. So two things can be true at the same time. Yes, it is simple, but you are making sure that all the documents, everything is recorded. So if anything ever happens, there's records and everybody knows what actually happened.
Yeah, it's just a simple, it's a real estate transaction. It's just how they do that part of it, just slightly different.
Yeah. And I was going to say, like, we as humans like to, or some of us like to overcomplicate and make things just way more than they should be. And so I've even heard you use the example of, someone's like, well, I Googled it, right? So when you Google something, right, I have a stomach ache, I have a headache. What does Google usually tell us, right? All the bad things, all the scary things.
Right.
And so it's really not relying just on the search engine, but like you said, going back into talking to actual people and really interviewing the folks that you're going to be working with, because it is a relationship for a while. You need to make sure that you have each other's phone numbers and you can connect, every year. Escrow payments can change. So that's important to always have that great relationship with it. And when they do go get that next house, like, we're there cheering them on, and yeah, here you go. All those payments were made on time and your credit score went up. We love those text messages too.
Yeah, no, I love the aspect of win-win. And I love the fact that you're empowering people to ask questions. And I think sometimes when you don't know a term, or you don't know a process, some people might feel intimidated enough where they're like, I'm not going to ask any questions because I don't want to appear like I'm not too smart. But I always say I'll be uncomfortable or not very smart for 5 minutes and then move on, than forever lose a deal or not get what I want because I did not ask. So it sounds like ask questions. The person that has nothing to hide will welcome the questions and will be more than happy to explain as often and as clearly and simply as possible. So it sounds really good. So let's say, I think we have explained really well what creative financing is, and just make it like you are the bank and I'm your buyer. It's as simple as that. And we'll make sure that the transaction, the process, gets done really well. But let's say that there are realtors in the world, right? Quite a few of them. And they might have a seller that is in trouble, but they're worried about their commission. So how do you work with realtors, and how would a realtor benefit from creative financing?
So yeah, absolutely. We love working with realtors. Have a lot of friends that are realtors, right? And the last few years, our friends didn't need us a whole lot. right? They'd be able to take a listing, put it on the market, and that thing would sell right away. And
Right.
it was a great time to be a realtor. But right now, some of my realtor friends are reaching out to me saying, I have a listing, and these folks, they don't have any equity, and they need to sell it for a loss, and they can't do that. Right. So right now, what we are finding, once again, I think I told you earlier, folks who just bought a house, could be 6, 7, 8,
Right.
9 months ago, who just bought it, who they're in a position right now where I've had the realtors reaching out to me say, hey, listen, I will work with you on my commission. I've had this listing for 116 days, and my sellers are in a jam. Because the one thing that I love working with realtors, they want to sell. They want to sell. That they're in the business of helping people just like what we are. And I really, for the most part, you see realtors who they're not going to try to put their commission before they are the sale of the house, right? So some of them, a lot of them, especially the real good ones, will have some flexibility to make the deal go through. Because the one thing I will say is if we're going to pay more than anybody else will, once again, so I'm going to overpay for the property, plus I have to pay closing costs and a commission on top of what I'm going to pay for the property, right? That I'm going to pay more for it. So I need to get some type of break on the commission. I've had realtors tell me that, hey, I want the full 6% because if not, my broker will be mad at me. So if they won't do that, I'm not doing the deal. Then I have some realtors that say, hey, listen, I will work with you. Let's get this deal done. I want to help these sellers out. So realtors are humans. There's no predicting what's going to happen. But I will say this, the realtors who have more flexibility are definitely going to have a better job of getting these done, because the thing is we pay closing costs, we pay their commission out of pocket. And if you have too high of a cost of entry into the deal, it kills the deals, right? So part of it, what makes it work on our end is having a low cost of entry. And if we can manage that, that's fine. So I'll give you a scenario. We bought one, Jen and I bought one on with a realtor in Pennsylvania, but the house was like $85,000. So if I had to pay a 6% commission on that, not a big deal. But now I've got one here in Florida that I'm looking at that's a little under $1 million. Now that realtor right there came out of the gate and told me, hey, listen, these are friends of mine. I'm willing to forego my commission or just knock it down real big. And if you're not working with a realtor on your end, like, let's make this deal happen. Let's help the sellers out. Bravo, right? Great job. I know I'm working with somebody here who's great. Then, not too long ago before that, I worked with another realtor who the house is a $500,000 house. House has been sitting in the market forever. Gorgeous house. People just bought it. It was built, I think, 2 years ago. She's the one that says, well, if I can't get 6% commission, my broker is going to yell at me and I can't do that deal. So I'm thinking to myself, you're going to need $30,000 plus me paying closing costs to buy a house for $500,000 that's not selling. So I have to buy it for $500,000. Really, I'm buying for $530,000, right? Because they owe $500,000 on it, and these folks can't afford to even take a loss. That's why they can't drop it any lower, and they're in a jam. These folks are in a jam. But I have a realtor who really is not flexible at all. So that deal is going to sit there. And unfortunate for the seller, because me as a buyer, maybe I pay her $10,000 and cover all the closing costs and fees. Then I'm buying the house for $515,000 and I bail out their seller who's in a jam, right? So every situation is going to be different, but we look at one as a case-by-case basis. How can I work with this realtor? How can I work with this seller? How can I make this on my end work? And we could budget it all together and make this a win for everybody. And once we have been saying this since day one, that if real estate is done right, everybody should win and everybody should feel good about it. So this is why we love working with realtors, because like I said earlier, a lot of them, they're movers and shakers, right? They want to get the job done. So the ones that catch on to this and really work for it, I mean, those are your superstars.
Yeah, and I was laughing because you're talking about that person will not take less than 6%, but what is 6% of zero, right? So, the house is not selling, you're not gonna get your 6%, but you might as well, I'll take 3% instead of zero. I don't know about you.
Well, and the point of it is too, that different and that attitude could be part of the difference why that properties they're selling for their seller or not.
Right.
So where I kind of have my perception is, are you and your broker putting your commission before you're putting out the helping your seller sell the house? Because that's what it sounds like is happening here. I mean, that's just what it is. It's no sugarcoating it. I'll try to polish it as good as I can, but in all honesty, let's call it for what it is. That's what's going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all about the grateful over greedy. So like if everybody's to win, then, you know, things have to be shifted around a little bit, and it's not going to be the way you thought it was going to be, especially in this market. And that's, I think, being creative in this market is really where people are going to win, you know, and to be thinking outside of the box. And sometimes it's hard because we're brought up a certain way and it's conventional and it's everything's just very black and white. But with this, there's a lot of gray area. And with that, you know, the situations people find themselves in, it's messy sometimes. Life can be messy, and you don't have to suffer by sitting there with your house on the market, not selling. You know, if you're stubborn and not willing to learn other ways, and that's kind of what happens. But if you can be open and think creatively and be, like you said, learn something new and just maybe feel stupid for 5 minutes. But once you learn about it, you know, you'll feel so much better and realize how much smarter of a person you are.
Right. And this is a long-term game. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. And they play for today. And they'll get out of you as much as they can because they're thinking about today only. But this is a referral business. People talk. I remember that realtor that sold us that house. She knew it was sitting there for way too long. We didn't know any better. And I assume, you know, what happens when you assume that my ex-husband knew how to negotiate and that he would know, right? It was sitting for a long time, overpriced. The people already bought a house. They had to move. We should definitely had offer less money. But she encouraged us to offer full price because she could tell that my ex-husband wanted it. So she shot herself because I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, she should have known the market. And she should have said, you should go under. And the market is already, it was definitely, we're almost at the cost of things happening. So it's one of those things where people don't realize, yeah, I got your money today, but now I'm never going to do business with you. And if I ever hear anybody that wants to work with you, I'm going to repeat that story over and over again. So I think being long-term minded, it's going to help so many more people do more business because they realize that people do talk. And I believe that what goes around comes around.
Well, you know, it's a small world and your reputation is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when we walk into a room, I always want people to smile and want to come up and say hi and not do one of these where they're, you know, they see you do that. It's important to have a good reputation and most importantly, do great business, not even good business, but great business. So, you know, if a lot of folks barely do just what they're supposed to do, but we love to go above and beyond many times because I just feel like putting that out there in the universe is obviously a good thing. But when you have a reputation of honestly, sincerely helping people, yeah, it does come around and you do get referrals and it does get out there that what you do. And we don't boast about it, but I mean, your friends find out, your family finds out stuff that you do and it gets out there. And that's why we do get a lot of referrals from friends and things like that. And then other investors start to find out what's going on. And then it turns into where your inbox gets full of messages and DMs from people saying, I got a deal, you know.
And I just thought of that as we're talking, you know, a great question to ask is, what are your company's core values? And if that an investor or whomever anybody that you're working with, if they can't repeat to you like pretty quickly terms that you would want to hear, like integrity, respect, professionalism, you know, compassion, because those are ours, some of them. And so that's really important that's the great research right there. Like, talk about gut feeling. If somebody like, oh yeah, I you know, they're going to give you a real quick know what's going on there.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. So anything that I forgot to ask you that you think folks that are thinking about creative financing, either the seller or a realtor, or people that are in distress and don't know what's available?
So I will say for realtors, if you are a realtor or if you're chatting with a realtor, I've been explaining to them, especially lately, you know, if situations like this come across your desk, you want to reach out to somebody like myself or somebody who's understands how to do this and at a high level, right? because there are some people who do a lot of these deals like we do, and there's some who do way, way more that really understand that, right? So what I'm saying is if I'm a realtor and I have a seller who owes too much on their house, and if I sell it minus commissions and fees, especially with the market and the house are selling for right now, and maybe it's even a current listing that you have that there's just no spread, there's no equity. This is where to have that tool in your toolbox, right? To find somebody and connect with somebody who can do this. So you could give a call, because I have a lot of my realtor friends who call me and say, hey, Joe, I have a scenario. Here's their phone number. Here's what's going on. This is the address. And these people are going to be open to seller financing. I just had one yesterday from one of my realtor friends who's selling one of our properties. Says one of his listings, the seller would be open to seller financing. Here's his phone number, and go make a deal. So we're coming across a lot of these situations. So what is it? It's educating realtors of how we could help them, right? It's all that, what can I do? What can you do for me world? Well, I could help you with some of these listings that aren't selling. And it just doesn't have to be the ones with no equity. Maybe somebody already relocated. They already bought their next house. They have equity in their current house, but they don't need it right away. You would be surprised how many people, just because I would want it, just because you would want it, I know she would want it, and I know all of you listening would want it. But that doesn't mean everybody wants it or needs it, more importantly, right? So even if you come across a lead of a deal or a seller, or if I'm a realtor and maybe my seller already bought somewhere else in another state and they have this property sitting here and they're making 2 payments, and maybe it's not the equity they need, maybe it's that somebody to start taking over their payments. And I will give you a quick situation that we are in right now with a current seller who has this beautiful turnkey house in Pennsylvania. Lived in it for 30 years. He's a contractor. It's turnkey. It's been in the market. It didn't sell. It did sell. Him and his wife come down here, buy their new house. 5 days before closing, their buyer backs out.
Ooh.
They lose their deposit, obviously, but they back out of the deal. They relist it back on the market. Now it's nothing, because they had it listed in June when the market was a little bit better. Now it's turned. He's like, now I can't even get anybody to walk in the door. He was like, my payment is a little over $1,000 a month, and I have my new payment at my new house. And the problem that I'm running into is, and he's got a lot of equity. It's not the equity that he needs. It'd be great, but more importantly, he needs debt relief. It's the payment every single month. It's the $1,000 for the utility bills that he's not paying, or he's having to pay on the property because it's the winter and it's cold up there. He's running the, gas and things like that on this big house. So he needs somebody to step in and take over his payments, right? The nest egg he and his wife had when they came down here is now shriveled up and gone. He says there's not enough check in the month.
Wow.
Right? So in that situation, if you are a realtor, or if I'm a buyer, or if I even am a seller, it's a great option for you to look at, because we're able to buy his property, buy it quickly, take it over, make his monthly payment for him right away, give him a small little down payment to kind of get him a little bit of a nest egg, something very small, and then we'll get him cashed out down the road. And when we say down the road, every situation is different. It could be 5 years. It could be 30 years. I have one today that I negotiated. It's for 600 months.
Wow.
600 months. And if I had a whole other 10 minutes to tell you about that story, it is an amazing story.
And what if you touch on the idea of like, well, why don't I just rent it out? Why would we be a better fit?
So I do have some folks say that too. And, are you looking to sell the property is my question, or are you looking to be a landlord and rent it? Because if you're looking to sell the property, I'm looking to buy it. If you want to be a landlord, which is being like an adult babysitter,
Yeah.
that's a job.
It's a job.
It is a job. So I want to really ask that question, because sometimes people might want to turn into a landlord. If you want to, what better house to start practicing on your own, I guess. But
and we've run into so many accidental landlords and I was one where I bought a house. Had my friend move into it with me, and then I met Joe. So I moved out of my house, and now I'm renting out my house for half of what I, should have been probably, and move in with him. And now I'm an accidental landlord. And while we worked out just fine, that could be, a lot of stress for somebody who is now worrying about maintenance, repairs, taxes, insurance, and everything else that comes along with
the leaking faucet and the furnace.
A bat. I think I did have a bat in the house we had to take care of.
But just think about what if you're out of state? How are you going to take care of it? So now you're going to have to hire a handyman and make sure they show up and they're doing the right work and sending checks. There's a lot of things. And while you were talking, Jen, I did the math on the 600 months. That's 50 years, if anybody wanted to know. So you have a deal that you can cash out in 50 years. That's pretty good. So what I'm hearing is flexibility. I love that a deal. When you remove the banks are very rigid. I think of a banker as the person with the bow tie and the tight suit, and the little glasses, right? Very rigid. And I think of creative financing as like a nice hippie dude from California with a Hawaiian shirt, surfing, and everything goes and everything's cool, right? So I think everyone should take from this conversation is that you have the flexibility of negotiating a deal that works for you, and you can ask, because I always say asking is free. So if something works for you, ask and remain flexible, and maybe the person, more than likely, they're gonna say yes, because what's important for me might not be important for the other person. It might be exactly what they need anyways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's why I always say what is important for me, or what I think I would do. The seller might be in a different situation, so you never want to prejudge it. You really don't know the situation that somebody's going through unless you ask it and really find out. So don't ever prejudge your deals, but there's a lot of ways that we can help people that are unimaginable. So really getting to understand all the different ways creative finance works, when to offer it or implement it, how it can benefit the seller. Right? These strategies are really important to understand, because there's a lot of times, guys, where these creative finance deals don't work. Right? I'm a seller. I need all cash and a beautiful house, and I need my cash and I need it now. Right? That usually is not the best fit. Sometimes that is better to put on the market, but there's a lot of these situations, and you'd be surprised how many there are where this is actually not only a great fit, but sometimes their best fit too. So this is why knowing these strategies are huge. And as the market starts to change and these interest rates are continue to go higher and the values of properties are continue to drop, the folks who really understand this are going to help people the most.
Mm-hmm.
That is so good. So I think it's a great segue. So people are listening, either a realtor or a seller, and they're like, oh my God, you guys can help me. So how can people connect with you if they want to see if you guys can help them with their property or properties?
Yeah, absolutely. We are very well known on Facebook. Jenn Buys 585. It's Jenn Buys BUYS 585. That was our original area code. We have since moved down to Florida, which we are in love with. But on Facebook, we try to share as much as possible. We share the seller stories, so we share different situations people find themselves in, and a lot of times people can relate to those. And then, from there you can find the email and our phone number. And we always have 24 hours. You can Facebook message us. Somebody will be there.
Nice. Yeah. So we'll make sure to put all your contact information. And I know that you guys also have a lot of resources for people that want to learn about how they can become creative financing experts. So they can find that information in the same Facebook page. And I know you guys have a Facebook group that I'm a member of as well.
Yep. So that's a different page you'll find. That will be over on Creative Finance Playbook. He's wearing his little shirt today. So we've got a Facebook group. So that's a nice place where you can ask questions, where we go live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. It's an awesome place to connect and find other people who are doing this as well. CreativeFinancePlaybook.com is our coaching website. So again, if you're looking to be on the buying end of this and really find more out about that, we've got classes available and we've got some exciting stuff coming in 2023. We're really pumped about that. We're working on some amazing courses right now. So more to come.
So exciting. I am so excited because I think that you are encouraging and equipping more people to get into real estate without having to get a lot of stuffy education. I know you guys are dual educators, but it's not as rigid and stuffy. I'm excited because I get to benefit from that as well and get to help people in my area. So I'm very, very excited about, I don't know if I'm bringing creative finance into my area, but I know that I am one of those people. So I'm excited to hopefully educate people and let them know that they don't have to be like me and lose all that money and have to pay me to come to that closing table with money on top of losing so much money, and then have to move to when you get used to a certain lifestyle, and then you're gonna rent at a higher price too. So I know that we're doing our part to help as many people as possible so they can keep their credit or improve their credit and be able to get in a better situation.
Well, and it's also too, like, and a lot of us, like when us particular, especially me, like I love what I do. Like I love houses. I've been into thousands of houses. I've dragged this young lady some of the most beautiful and some of the most difficult to walk through through all types of things. But it's just every unique situation, every unique house has a story, and I always just I geek out to that kind of stuff. So I absolutely love it. So even on my off time when I'm not supposed to be working, what do I do for pleasure? Like I'm on Zillow looking at some house. Because I honestly, like, I love what I do. So I love helping, but this is also too, like, probably why we make so many of these deals is because we've dove into it. And, we've had ourselves a lot of great coaches and a lot of great teams that we've worked with and attorneys and a lot of classes to really learn how, how can we do this and implement it the right way, help people out, and have a lot of fun, because that's what it's supposed to be about too. You got to enjoy it.
And I was a teacher. My favorite was middle school, like 7th, 8th grade. So I love to have fun, and, just that caring and helping people is in my nature as well. So I think that's why we make a really great team. And the more people we can educate, the better, for sure.
Absolutely. I think this is one of my favorite episodes because we delve really deeply into what creative financing is. And the reason why I love talking to you guys so much since the first time that we did the last episode is because I have heard from other people. They mention your name so many times. Oh my God, Jenn and Joe. I'm like, who are these people? Because I really like to work with people where after I talk to them, after I hang out with them, after we do some sort of transaction, I feel good about myself. I don't like to pursue things where I felt like somebody sold me something, because that's just like a yucky feeling. And I know many people feel that way. And in an industry where some people can be on the shady side, it's really nice to connect with people that love what they're doing and are all about helping people. We didn't talk a lot about how you guys help people getting houses that might not be able to qualify. So I definitely commend you for doing that work that that helps with the American dream of owning a home. So it's not just all about making money, which is great, but it's also how we can give back and help some people. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
The next episode, we'll do rent to own.
Absolutely. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so excited for all the things you guys are doing and for everything that's to come. So we'll see you hopefully very soon.
Definitely will. Thank you so much for having us on.
Absolutely. Thank you.